I'm going to show you how to make the mix and match bag from Kreative Kiwi, and for this I'm going to be using a 5x7 hoop, a layer of cutaway stabiliser per hooping, some silver thread, my fabrics and batting cut to size, and I've also made some handles for it which I will explain how to make later. You will find a link to this design in the video description below, along with lots of other useful information and discount codes, so please do take the time to have a look. You're going to start by hooping your layer of stabiliser, and then we're going to place pins around the top of the hoop so that it doesn't get pulled down between the two hoop pieces. So take your pin, place it on top of the inside hoop, push it through your stabiliser, bring it back round and then back through the stabiliser again, and that creates your anchor. Load file A into your machine, that's for the front, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for your batting. I've placed a piece of paper underneath my hoop so that you can see my outline. You're now going to place your batting over the top and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. You're now going to place your centre fabric over this area here. This is the top of your bag, this is the bottom. So place your fabric to cover this outline there. You want to make sure that you've got as much on the edge as you can for your seam allowance. And tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 3 to secure it. Load whichever colour you want for the stippling over the fabric that you've just secured into your machine, and then you're going to stitch colour number 4. If you don't want to do the quilting or stippling at any point, you just skip that colour. We're now going to trim up a little bit of the excess along here and here, just leaving about 1/4 of an inch. We're now going to place our second fabric in this area here. If, like me, you're using a fabric that needs to be straight, line it up, fold on the stitch line and make a crease. Then when you turn your fabric over, line that crease up with the stitch line here. That way when it's folded back, it will be nice and straight. So once you've positioned your fabric, you can then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch colour number 5. And that's our fabric all nice and straight. We're going to trim up a little bit here as we did for the first fabric. Then you're going to flip your fabric back and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch colour number 6, and that's going to secure it in the hoop. Next is colour number 7, and that's going to quilt the fabric that we've just secured. So load whichever colour thread you want for your quilting in your machine, and then you're going to stitch colour number 7. change your thread colour to whichever colour you want for the motif of butterflies going up this panel, and then you're going to stitch colour number 8. Next is a detail along the first join line here. So load whichever colour thread you want into your machine for that, and then stitch colour number 9. I just want to show you this detail, it's so pretty. We're now going to add our third fabric to this area here, and I'm going to turn this around so I can see what I'm doing. And we're going to do exactly the same in exactly the same way. So place your fabric over the area if you've got a right sense, that is. If you don't, it doesn't matter. As long as it covers this area, that's fine. So I'm going to make a crease along my stitch line here. Then I'm going to flip my fabric over and align this crease with this stitch line here. And of course making sure that your fabric's going to come down and leave yourself plenty of seam allowance. Now I'm going to take that in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch colour number 10. We're now going to check the alignment and trim off the excess from along here. So there's my fabric pulled back and that's all nice and straight. So I'm now going to trim off a little bit of the excess here. Flip your fabric back as you did for the other side and crease your seam and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch colour number 11 to secure it. Next is the chain of daisies that goes down this seam here. So change your thread colour to whichever colour you want for that, and then you're going to stitch colour number 12. Next is the centre of the flowers, so change your thread colour to whichever colour you want for that, and then you're going to stitch colour number 13. Next is the butterfly on this panel here, so change your thread colour to whichever colour you want for that, and then you're going to stitch colour number 14. Next we're going to be positioning our fabric for the top here, but first off I'm just going to trim up the excess on here and here a little bit. Okay, so take your top fabric and you're going to place it face down over this fabric here, but making sure that this edge here overlaps this stitch line here. And then you're going to tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch colour number 15, and that's going to secure it. We're now going to trim up a little bit of the excess along here. Then you're going to flip your fabric up and crease along the seam. Tape it in place, and then you're going to stitch colour number 16 to secure it. Next is the quilting along here. So change your thread for whichever colour you want for that, and then you're going to stitch colour number 17. Colour number 18 is the motif run along here. I'm going to stay with the grey for this. The next colour to be stitched is the candle wicking detail along the seam line. So change your thread colour to whichever you want for that into your machine, and then you're going to stitch colour number 19. I'm staying with the grey again. We're now going to add the handle to our bag. I made mine from a piece of fabric, rectangular fabric. I folded it in half, right sides together. I stitched along the edge, about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. I turned it out the right way, and then I pressed it so that the seam that I just created would sit in the middle underneath rather than on the edge. On my handle I've marked the middle, and then I've marked down each side from the middle 5 3/4 inches, and I'm going to place these marks on the edge here, and I'm going to line it up to the second stitch line of the quilting in, and then I'm going to tape it in place. Then I'm going to bring the other one round so that the underside of my strap, or handle should I say, is facing upwards, and do the same on this side as well. I'm just going to pop a bit of tape down just to hold that down for now. Then you're going to take your lining fabric and you're going to place it face down over the top, and the stitch line is going to come and secure it along here, and that's going to sew your lining in place as well as the handles too. And I'm just going to put a couple of pins, one each side, right out of the way of the stitch line, just to hold that so that it doesn't move during stitching. Once you're happy that everything's in the right place, you're then going to pop your hoop into your machine, and you're going to stitch colour number 20, and that's going to secure your fabric and your handle in place. And that's our bag panel completed. We're now going to remove this from the hoop. So I pressed this down and I trimmed up all the way around, leaving myself a 2 centimetre or just under, I think that's 3/4 of an inch seam allowance. So all it remains now is to make another one. You can either make another one the same as the front, or there is a plainer back piece that you can stitch, and that looks like this. And once you've got your 2 pieces, they're then ready to join together to turn into a bag. So to piece together the 2 parts of the bag, open them out. You're going to place them right sides together, and you want the front to the front and lining to the lining. And then you're going to align the corner stitches of both panels, So I've pushed a pin into the very corner stitch, and now you know that it's nicely aligned, and you can now pin your panels together. With the backing not so crucial, just make sure that the trimmed edges are nicely aligned. And then pin them in place. Where you've got your seam for the bag to the lining, make sure that they're lined up as well on your bag. Otherwise it's going to look odd later on when you've stitched it all in place. Okay, one thing you do need to do is leave a gap in your bag so that you can turn it. So I'm going to mark that, and you want at least a hand's width. So I'm going to mark that with 2 pins, and that's going to be my start and stop point. All it remains now is to stitch all the way around the edge, and you're going to stay on this, just inside this stitch line here, all the way around. If you're not very good at sewing straight lines, draw your lines on as I have done here, and then you're just going to sew all the way around, and you're going to start here and stop here. I'm now just going to clip the corner of the sides here, so that when we turn our bag out the right way, it all lays nice and neatly. And I'm now going to turn it out the right way. So that's my bag turned out the right way, and there's the opening through which it was turned. All that remains now is for me to close this up, and I will hand stitch that just using a whip stitch, and then it will become completely invisible. And then after that, the lining will be pushed down into the inside of the bag. So I'm now going to stitch this up, and then you can join me in a minute. So now my bag's closed up, all I need to do now is push the lining down inside it. And I'm now just going to give it a light press around the top here so that it all sits properly. And that's all my bag pressed. There's the front and the back. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of new videos as soon as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's lots of ideas, help and inspiration there for everybody. And thank you very much for joining me. You'll find a link for this design along with lots of other information in the video description below.